Imagine it's 2020. Joe Biden is elected as president, and within the first year, so many laws have been passed that you thought would never be passed, and now you don't recognize your country. And then there's another one, and another one, and another one, and it starts to seem like you're living in the twilight zone.
There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Fast forward to 2024, landslide victory by Donald Trump and the United States election. Before that, assassination attempts, court cases. These last 4 years have been crazy, not just in the United States, but in Western countries as a whole. So I ask you now, has the West started to move back to the right? Welcome to the Mr. Wilson's Got a Headache podcast. I'm your host, Dennis the Menace. Since you're here, like the video, subscribe to the channel to see more content, and if you got something to say, the comment section is open. Check this out.
Argentina's fiercely polarized presidential election is over. And populist Javier Milei came out ahead. Right-wing economist and TV personality securing the presidency after running an eccentric campaign promising to rein in soaring inflation and fight socialist values.
Porque hoy comienza la reconstrucción de Argentina.
Supporters flooding the streets of Buenos Aires, hopeful for change at a time when the poverty rate has reached 40% in the country with the third largest economy in Latin America. Milei securing the famous Casa Rosada after a contentious runoff with more than 55% of the vote, compared with his rival, Argentina's economy minister, Sergio Massa, the largest margin of victory since the country returned to democratic elections in 1983. A controversial figure known by his fans as the Crazy and the Wig for his larger-than-life personality and hair. At times compared to Brazil's president Jair Bolsonaro and former U.S. President Donald Trump, who congratulated Milei on his victory, writing, quote, "Make Argentina great again" on his Truth Social platform.
If you're not familiar, Javier Milei won the presidency in Argentina about a year ago. The ironic thing is that the people of Argentina, a country that was once one of the richest countries in the world, were complaining about the exact same things that people have been complaining about here in the United States. 40% of the people in Argentina were considered to be living under the poverty line. 40%. Inflation had hit the country and people were losing their buying power. Unemployment rate was increasing. Home ownership started to drop. Businesses were shutting down, and at that time, Argentina was using socialism as a way to govern. There was no reason for you to work if you could get free money from the government. Javier Milei told the people on the campaign trail he was going to do away with all of the socialist policies. He was going to cut government spending, and he was going to shrink the size of the government. And I'm sure right now with Doge, with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, most of us can see the parallels between Argentina and the United States. But that wasn't the only thing that happened in 2024 that makes me think that most of the Western countries are moving farther to the right and leaving the left in the rearview mirror. Check out what happened in France.
Earlier this year, after a disastrous performance in the EU elections, President Emmanuel Macron called for a snap election for the National Assembly, the French Parliament. In July, France went to the polls, and the results were clear. A deeply fractured assembly with no absolute majority for any party. After weeks of infighting and negotiation, an agreement was finally reached. Macron's party teamed up with the Republicans to form a centrist conservative minority government, with the reluctant and unstable support from the far-right National Rally. Michel Barnier was appointed Prime Minister, leading this fragile coalition. While this setup kept the government afloat for a while, it was always seen as temporary, as the far-right had leverage to bring the government down at any time. Just 3 months later, Barnier faced his first big test, the French budget. For years, France had been spending far more than it earned in taxes, pushing its deficit to over 6% of GDP, double the limit set by EU rules. On top of that, France's debt has skyrocketed to alarming levels. To put it into perspective, France's debt stands at around 110% of its GDP, while neighboring Germany is at just 60% of its GDP. These numbers aren't just a problem for France, they're a major concern for other European countries. Many fear that if France doesn't get its finances under control, it could trigger another Eurozone crisis, destabilizing the entire EU. To address this growing crisis, Barnier unveiled a bold plan. 40 billion euros in spending cuts and 20 billion euros in tax hikes, designed to inject 60 billion euros into France's struggling state coffers.
Around mid-2024, President of France, Emmanuel Macron, held a snap election for the parliament. In the United States, it would be like the Senate and the House of Representatives. In that race, his party lost seats and did not secure a majority. However, the far-right party picked up more seats than they usually do. At first, it looked like the far-right would have control, but Emmanuel Macron was forced to make a deal with a smaller party just so he could retain control, or some level of control. And ironically, France has some spending problems. They have some debt issues. They have inflation. They have the same symptoms that Argentina had and the United States. So we've seen a shift in Argentina about a year ago. Then around 6 months after that, we saw a close call in France. And now it looks like Justin Trudeau has an issue in Canada. Check this out.
Behind closed doors, the Prime Minister tried to calm the chaos triggered by his Finance Minister's bombshell resignation. Justin Trudeau says he'll consider his next move over the holidays, not soon enough for some.
The Prime Minister is living in a false reality. He's delusional if he thinks we can continue like this.
About 50 Liberal MPs are now calling for Trudeau to step down. That's 1/3 of the caucus. Making matters worse, the Liberals were decimated in a by-election last night.
He's at minus 38. We lost the BC by-election by 50 points yesterday. We lost St. Paul's. We lost LaSalle. And I think all of these are clear indicators that the Liberal Party will do far better in another election with a different leader. Canadians want a change.
Chrystia Freeland showed up at the urgent meeting and was applauded. She hugged the Prime Minister before she left. It was an olive branch that was sharply different than her resignation letter. She criticized Trudeau for spending on political gimmicks and not putting money in reserve to fight Donald Trump's threat of 25% tariffs. Freeland negotiated the last free trade deal with the U.S. under the previous Trump administration. On social media, the president-elect celebrated her exit, called Freeland's behavior toxic, and said that she will not be missed.
Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, is dealing with people in his own party demanding that he step down. And guess what? For the same reasons we talked about in Argentina, the same reasons we talked about in France, the same reasons that changed people's minds here in the United States. Not only that, Justin Trudeau's finance minister and other ministers that he appointed, which would be the equivalent of the presidential cabinet in the United States, several of those people have resigned from their positions. And according to some, allegedly, he's trying to stay firm on his spending and all the things that the Canadian people no longer want the government to do. Everybody's waiting to see what Mr. Trudeau is going to do, if he's going to step down. If he does, it looks like the leader of a more conservative party will be the next Prime Minister of Canada. But just like in the United States, when everybody was telling Joe Biden to step aside, Justin Trudeau is the only person who can make that decision. He cannot be forced. I gave you 4 examples today: Argentina, France, Canada, and what happened here in the United States with Donald Trump, to support the idea that major Western countries seem to be moving farther and farther to the right. What do you think? You think the left has taken it too far? Do you believe that I've given you enough evidence to show you that most Western countries are moving to the right? Or do you think this is just a fluke? The next election cycle, we'll see people adjust back. Explain it to me in detail in the comments section. And as always, I'll see you on the next video.